Good afternoon. Hawkeye Hangout here from the Hawkeye of the Storm. We are breaking down Iowa and Iowa State tonight. Big time Cy-Hawk showdown and an opportunity for Iowa to get a very quality win, a road win. First road win against the top 25 team of the season. So an opportunity there. Of course, Iowa falling just short against Purdue last week, but they will have an opportunity to play a team who is red hot, the undefeated Iowa State Cyclones. Of course, they are coming off wins against Creighton, Xavier, Memphis. They also beat an Oregon State team early. So certainly lots to talk about and much anticipation for this game tonight right here in Ames. If you want to call us, you can call us 515 635 1601. 515 635 1601 as we continue to break down the game. And Adam, out of the gate, this is a good question. I think yesterday somebody asked me something about, Iowa might lose this game. And I think my response was, well, yeah, they're playing a ranked team. And I didn't realize until this morning that, Iowa is somehow favored. I think Vegas, obviously Vegas knows a lot more than you and I do. But I will say this: it's sort of interesting if you look at Ken Palm's rankings. It's not even close. Iowa is far and away the better team if you just look at strictly at Ken Palm rankings, which I know there's much more to be said than just Ken Pomeroy and his ratings. Also, if you look at the net ratings, Iowa's much higher. This is how I look at it, and again, I'll probably be proven wrong by Vegas tonight. But I look at Iowa State. They've been tested. They've won away from home. They do it with defense. They have not found a way to lose yet this season. In fact, they found a way to win in 8 separate games. They've had close games, and they've found a way to gut those games out. And so, you look at Iowa. Iowa hasn't really gotten the job done against a top-tier opponent, and I'm including Illinois in that. Virginia is not a top-tier opponent this year, at least not right now. That is not the same Virginia team that we're accustomed to seeing. That's not a Virginia team that will be competing for the ACC title. I will be shocked if Virginia finishes in the top 3 or 4 of the ACC, because I think the ACC is actually decent. We saw them compete well with the Big Ten in the Big Ten ACC Challenge. So I would be shocked to see Virginia finish high. But Iowa did get the job done. So Iowa knows how to win. But they've also come up close and short on the road. Let's hope that's not the case tonight. And yes, I believe the line is 5. Last time I checked, it actually moved in Iowa's direction, Adam. I believe it started Iowa by 4.5. Let's see what Caesars Sportsbook says now. Again, last time I checked, I believe it was 5. And right now, Iowa by 5. So, again, you hope that I don't think that really has anything. I don't think that's going to play a huge role in who wins this game. You always wonder about the disrespect card. And of course, it brings me back to the Big Ten championship game this past Saturday. I really thought I would get up for that game. But at some point, it comes down to Jimmy's and Joe's as opposed to, you're playing the disrespect card or the underdog card. And not to say that Iowa State may not do that. I mean, if you're a ranked team, as Iowa State is, number 17 in the country, you're a ranked team and you're an underdog at home. You're undefeated. It's not like you're coming off a loss. You're undefeated. You're a ranked team, and you're the underdog at home to your arch rival who you haven't beaten in, 3-4 years now? When's the last time Iowa State beat Iowa? Of course, last year was the blowout it's been 4 years, I believe. I'd have to look back. Again, last year was the blowout over in Iowa City. Iowa won in 2019, the infamous thanks for the memes shoes, signed shoes from Jordan Bohannon in 19. And I believe 18, again, I'd have to look back, but I believe 18 Iowa won that game in Carver. I believe that was a game I was at. I think Iowa's won 3 straight in this series. It's amazing how much Iowa in general, just Iowa sports in general, have dominated Iowa State. But the tide may be turning a bit because we saw the Iowa State women coming out on top last night. Disappointing defeat for the Iowa Hawkeyes. And of course, Caitlin Clark had a big game, but that team right now is not playing with the same level of aggression and confidence that they were playing with prior to their COVID shutdown. And that's unfortunate. They've now lost on the road at Duke and on the road at Iowa State. So they haven't proven they can win on the road. So disappointing finish last night for the Iowa women. Brian, prediction of what Jordan will leave at half court after the win tonight. I'll tell you what, this is what I want, Brian. I want Jordan to actually play well because these last 2 games he's been non-existent, and these were, no offense to Jordan, but these were the 2 biggest games so far on the schedule, and he really hasn't helped. I mean, what has Jordan done these last 2 games to help this team to victory? I could make the argument that he hindered Iowa's route to victory, and that's no insult to Jordan. He's limited. We talk about it every year. 6 straight years now we've talked about it. He's limited on defense. Oftentimes he's a liability on defense. So he's got to be able to make threes and free throws. And if he's not getting to the line, he can't make free throws. And if he's, not getting shots up from 3, it's hard to rationalize why he's on the court. I mean, that's just a fact. Now, if Joe Toussaint's out of control, turning the ball over, maybe you turn to Jordan. But right now, I'll tell you what, Aaron Ulis is playing good basketball. Aaron Ulis has really impressed me over these last couple of games. He plays under control. He's smooth. He's athletic. He's quick. He's a good defender. Aaron Ulis is going to be a really good point guard in the Big Ten. So, yeah, I totally am with you there, Brian. I hope Jordan has a big game. But if he scores 5 or 6 points and goes 1 of 4 from 3 and they squeak out a victory, which is possible, I sure hope Jordan just plays it cool. I mean, there's no reason to antagonize. There's going to be, I'm sure there are going to be boos tonight, and I'll be at this game, so I won't be booing them. But I'm looking forward to this atmosphere because I think it's going to be really good. I mean, I'm an Iowa fan. I'm not a closet Iowa State fan, but I'll tell you this: Hilton Coliseum is awesome when it's rocking. I'd be anxious to hear from you guys listening on the other end if you've ever been to Hilton, because my experience at Hilton has been really impressive. I have no doubt that the Iowa State they showed up last night for the women's game. So they're going to show up tonight. This is an Iowa State team that's, Andy Katz, I saw he released his top 10 surprise teams so far this season. Iowa State was number 1. Iowa, I believe, was number 4 on the list. So, it's an intriguing matchup. I think both teams are just totally built differently than last year. That's really the story. Both teams are built totally different than last year. You have Iowa, who was built on the 3-point shot. Of course, the post game with Luka Garza, everything ran through Luka, and rightfully so with how good that big guy was. But now Iowa can get out and run more. They've got the athleticism to be able to defend and I think play in more man-to-man sets when they don't give up a size advantage on the inside. And I don't think tonight they really have too big of a size advantage. Iowa State likes to play small ball. Your George Condit's going to get a lot of minute for the Cyclones. I can see the Murray twins matching up well with him, although he's a physical, athletic guy. Iowa's just built differently. And Iowa State, you could say the same thing. Of course, Iowa State brought in Isaiah Brockington from Penn State. They brought in Gabe Kalsher from Minnesota. They brought in the kid from UNLV that started at Iowa State, went to UNLV, and then came back with Otzelberger. So there's a lot of intriguing storylines. Iowa, of course, is familiar with Isaiah Brockington. They're familiar with Gabe Kalsher. And so, it's going to be interesting to see just the familiarity, especially from guys like Connor and Jordan and those guys. They know Isaiah's game. They know Gabe Kalsher's game. I don't know how many. It feels like Gabe Kalsher's been in school for 10 years. And he's still playing at Iowa State and playing well, by the way. Really good shooter. Iowa State's not going to blow you out of the gym. If Iowa State's going to win this game, I see this being a very close game. I'm not saying Iowa's going to blow Iowa State out, but I go back to my prediction of the Nebraska-Iowa football game from a couple of weeks ago. I think I said going into that game, trying to look at it from an even-keeled, balanced perspective, I said heading into that Nebraska game, I said, look, if anybody's going to win in a blowout, it's going to be Nebraska. It's going to be Nebraska. It's not going to be Iowa. Iowa's not blowing anybody out of the gym or out of the stadium. And in that case, I was right. They were up 21 to 22 to 6, something like that, 21 to 6 early. Iowa comes all the way back, wins a close game. That was the only way I was going to win that game. It was going to be a close game. And you saw Nebraska had the potential of turning that game into a blowout and just couldn't get it done. I could see the same thing tonight. Hopefully it's not Iowa State winning a close game. But again, if Iowa State's going to win this game, they're going to have to figure out a way to keep Keegan Murray in check. Iowa State likes to keep the score lower. It's not a Hoiberg coach team. I know Otzelberger was on that roster for a couple of years with Fred. This is not a run and gun team, at least not yet. They don't have the pieces for that. And I give TJ Otzelberger a lot of credit because he's taken what he could get from the portal and he's built a team that's built to win now. They're going to win in a little bit different way than we're used to, or Iowa State fans are used to. But they're winning games, and that's the bottom line. So it shall be interesting to see, again, how Iowa handles just the different makeup of this team. Isaiah Brockington, their best athlete. He can shoot the three, he can drive, he can defend. He's by far their best player, in my opinion. But again, they've got lots of guys who have come on. They return almost nobody from last year. Of course, you know the storylines with Xavier Foster. He's gone. He's done with the team. He's been dismissed from the program due to an ongoing sexual assault investigation that is centered on Xavier. Excuse me. And so he won't be out there. And, of course, Iowa State lost a lot of other pieces during the offseason. But, again, they are familiar with several guys who have transferred in. Jermaine Jackson, this game is going to dictate on how the rest of our season will go. It always does. Well, yes and no, Jermaine. I mean, I don't think we want to make too much out of this. I think this team, and I've never said this before, but I could not be happier. I've never been happier than I am right now after a 0-2 Big Ten start. Even though I'm disappointed because Iowa could have easily beaten Purdue. They were within 2 with a couple minutes to go. Certainly, they were within a couple points to Illinois. They were up by, I believe, 9 in the first half on the Illini and found a way to lose those games. But this is such a young team right now. They're meshing. Keegan Murray, these last 2 games, has been dealing with an ankle sprain. You hope he's ready to go tonight. I have no reason to think he isn't. If he's not, it's going to be tough to generate points against that Iowa State front. But I wouldn't necessarily say it's a make or break game, Jermaine. I think you get a little bit of a break after this game, so you're going to be playing. All these guys are going to be playing their tails off tonight because they're going to be able to rest for 10 days, and they have finals, and then they go up to the Pentagon in South Dakota to play Utah State. So, it's an important game, I think, mainly for resume, because this is a game that you look back at in March and say, wow, that was a really good win for Iowa, because I think Iowa State's going to be there. I'm not saying they're going to stay in the top 25 all year, because I think the Big 12 is tough, but I do see Iowa State being at least middle of the pack Big 12 team, maybe upper middle of the pack. So it's a good opportunity for Iowa, just like the Illinois game was at home, and especially like that Purdue game was on the road. But let's not forget, Iowa already has a resume-building win in Virginia. I know Virginia, I just kind of downplayed them. They're not the same Cavaliers team that we're accustomed to seeing, but that's still a Virginia team, and I guarantee you when the committee looks at that in March, that will be a plus on Iowa's resume, and rightfully so. Brian, you would think that Jordan Bohannon could get up for this game. I would think he'd get up for them all, Brian. This is his last go around. I mean, unless there's some rule that changes and he comes back for a 7th year or the perfect number, I think he's done this year. So if teams want to shut him down, they basically shut him down. I think he would benefit from, and I think Iowa would benefit from, more screen action for Jordan. You've got to take advantage of the fact that he's playing without the ball more. And again, Iowa State's an excellent defensive team. They guard the perimeter well. But Jordan's going to be able to play off of Keegan this season. Again, Keegan was out for the Purdue game, so that may have affected Jordan, certainly. But let's remember, Tony Perkins is playing really, really well right now. And as long as Tony Perkins continues to play really well, it's going to cut into Jordan Bohannon's minutes, and rightfully so. I heard somebody say the other day, well, are we concerned that it could be a morale issue or an attitude issue if Jordan consistently ends up playing less minutes than Tony Perkins? Could we be afraid that Jordan's not going to be happy? Who cares? May the best man win. He knows that. It's a 6th-year senior. Now, he came back to play a lot. I get it. But if you're not playing better than your backup, then Tony Perkins, your backup, should be playing more. I think it's pretty simple. And if he's a team-first guy like we keep hearing, it won't matter. All right? And maybe he should come off the bench. I see Brandon's comment here. Jabo off the bench. Perkins start. I get that mindset, Brandon. Here's what you got to remember, though. I think starting is probably a bit overrated. Whoever's playing more minutes, that's what's more important. Obviously, Iowa started its last game against Illinois in sort of rough fashion. They gave up 20 points in the first 7 minutes. And I don't want to put that all on Jordan Bohannon, but he was part of that starting unit that struggled early. That's the problem with starting a kid and then playing him less minutes as the game goes on, is if you really don't have faith in him, or you have more faith in a guy like Perkins coming off your bench, you may bring Perkins in and you're in a 20 to 11 hole. And that's exactly what happened on Monday. Now, Iowa climbed out of that hole, but it was too late. I mean, it wasn't too late. They can't climb out of the hole, but weren't able to build the lead up enough. And then Illinois made the comeback and then ended up controlling the game. So you do want to get off to a quick start. That is a valid point about starting guys, because, again, you hear you look at the NBA and you look at guys that are considered sixth men. I mean, I look at a guy like Jason Terry, who made a career out of being the best sixth man in the league for the Dallas Mavericks, but he basically played starter minutes. If you have a guy in the starting lineup that you can trust, it's either a defensive stopper or it's going to always get you, he's going to always be reliable for something. You're not worried about him helping dig a hole early. Jordan Bohannon, the problem sometimes is if he's neutralized from the 3-point line, he's neutralized everywhere. And then you have the potential of him becoming a liability. And, again, that can assist the other team in digging Iowa a hole early. But again, I agree. Bohannon off the bench is an intriguing idea. Do I think it'll happen? I don't. I mean, not anytime soon. I will be very surprised if Fran McCaffrey does that tonight. And I don't think he probably should. It's too early to make that change. But as of right now, Tony Perkins is playing better basketball. So if it were to happen, I'm not going to blame Fran McCaffrey. I just don't think it will happen this soon, especially, again, given the circumstances going on the road. This is the most hostile environment they will have faced, with the exception maybe being Purdue. Purdue's great, and I know that the home crowd there is tremendous, one of the toughest places to play, but I would say Hilton is right there with Mackey. That's how good Hilton is when it's packed, when it's rocking. And I know Coach Close, who will be joining us for Iowa postgame after the game right here on our channel, Coach Close has talked about, Mackey Arena being one of the toughest places to play in the country, maybe the toughest place in the Big Ten to play. And I don't doubt that, but I think Hilton is one of the toughest places to play in the Big 12 and nationally. That's how good it is. And I've been there numerous times, and I've been there when it's not rocking too. But even when it's not rocking, it's still a good environment. And believe you me, it will be lively tonight. It will be a packed house tonight. The students are going to show up. I hope there's a lot of Iowa people there. Chances are there will be more Iowa State people, and that's understandable. I certainly will be there in black and gold, but it will be rocking tonight. And that's one of the great things about college basketball. I say this every year. I try to go to at least one road game a year. And a couple of years ago, we didn't go to one last year due to the virus, of course. Nobody could go to games last year. But 2 years ago, I went to Minneapolis for Iowa at Minnesota, and I'd never been to the Barn. And I think that's a great environment. A lot of very spiteful Minnesota fans. Now, I've learned this past week that there aren't any fans that compare to the bitterness and the hostility of Michigan Wolverines fans. But Minnesota fans don't typically, or at least the Minnesota program doesn't typically, as a rule, like Iowa, and they are a rival. I don't think Iowa really cares much about Minnesota, but there's a lot of "we hate Iowa" chants. But the environment was just cool. The arena's cool up there, and Iowa did win. That helps. But even, I think back to 2015, Iowa taking on Iowa State and Hilton. Jared Utoff goes for 30 points in the first half. I was at that game. And those 30 first half points were just absolutely incredible. It was the best first half performance. It was the best half performance I've ever seen from an Iowa player, and that includes any of the performances from Luka Garza. It just does. And I know Luka scored, 44 points or something like that against Michigan a couple years ago. The 30 points from Jared Utoff in the first half against Iowa State was the best single performance in a half that I've seen as an Iowa fan. And then you go out in the second half, Iowa had built a 20-plus point lead. They come out in the second half. Jared Utoff disappears. Iowa State climbs all the way back into it, and they win by a point or two. And it's just an absolutely electric environment. And I'll be honest, it sucked. It sucked. And as an Iowa guy being there and hearing that crowd every time Iowa State scored to get closer and closer and closer and closer, you see what's happening, but you can't do anything about it. And Fran McCaffrey could see what was happening, but at some point, your players got to figure out a way to climb out of that momentum deficit that they had, and they just weren't able to do it. So it was one of the more exhilarating, heartbreaking, disappointing, all of the above games, environments that I've ever been a part of. That was just an unbelievable 2015 Cyhawk game. It was absolutely incredible. And again, it's what makes college basketball great. It's what makes this rivalry great. Even though the rivalry has been one-sided in almost every sport for like the last 5 years, 4 or 5 years, more than that for football, it still is a great rivalry. I don't want Iowa State to ever win it, but it's still a great rivalry. Charles, good to see you on here as well. He agrees with Brandon that Jabo should be coming off the bench. Again, that may happen at some point. I don't see it happening tonight. And I haven't heard any injury updates, although recently Fran McCaffrey and that university, they've been releasing injury updates. They've been releasing injury updates basically an hour or less before the game starts. Just responding to a somewhat urgent email here, so apologize for the brief delay there. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. Keegan Murray, again, he played against Illinois. You don't know how he handled, how his ankle handled the action. Hopefully he's okay. Again, you get a bit of a break from Monday to Thursday, but not really. Iowa State gets 2 extra days rest. That's certainly a storyline as well. They will be primed and ready, and you got to remember too, the Cyclones are coming off an 0-18 season in the Big 12 conference, so they're hungry. This is a hungry team. It's a hungry fan base. The football team disappointed with a 7-5 record. It's not what Iowa State fans wanted or expected. So there's no question that Iowa State fans are ready for something to cheer for. And they've gotten it so far. They scheduled well. I give them credit. People want to diss Iowa's schedule. Iowa State played, again, Oregon State's not great, but it's a Power 5 school early. They beat them. They went on the road at Creighton for the Big East Big 12 Challenge. That's a good game. Again, Iowa did the same thing with Virginia. But then Iowa State also got Xavier in Memphis, so they played in a great NIT preseason tip-off tournament. And that helped, man, that's going to help them in March to win at Memphis. And here's the thing about Memphis, folks. Memphis was number 9 in the country when Iowa State won that game just a couple of weeks ago. And you may say, well, Memphis is young. They're starting slow. That's true. But I guarantee you this, folks. When you get to March and that Memphis team is rolling behind Amoni Bates and that whole young squad and Penny Hardaway as the head coach, that is going to go down as a very, very, very good win for Iowa State. And I would say the same thing about Xavier. Now, Xavier, I don't know. We'll have to see how that plays out, especially with Jack Nunge. I'm intrigued by that roster. But Memphis is going to get better. They're young now, but once they start rolling, people won't look back at the Iowa State win over the Tigers and say, well, Memphis was young at the time. They were figuring themselves out. No, it's going to be looked at as a very quality win. That's just how the committee looks at things, and that's okay. I want Iowa State to be a tournament team. I don't want them to miss out on the tournament. That doesn't help the state of Iowa. It doesn't help the strength of schedule for Iowa. I think it's good for the state. I think Drake, I always want Drake and UNI to find a way in the tournament. Very rarely do both of those teams make it, but I think it's good for the state, and it's good for recruiting. It helps kids stay in state. I'll be honest, I would rather a kid like, Xavier Foster, who of course now is dealing with legal issues and is not on a roster, but I'd rather a kid like that who's a 4 or 5-star kid pick an in-state school. Now, it's more painful, right? You lose a kid like that you're hoping would come to your school, and he goes to an arch rival. But who wants Xavier Foster to go down to Baylor? Did people want that? Maybe you did. Maybe you just detest Iowa State that much. But it's good to have kids stay in the state. It's disappointing when you lose guys like Rafe LaFrance and Harrison Barnes and certainly Doug McDermott. He never had a chance of staying here due to who his father was and where he was coaching at the time. But Kirk Heinrich, you can go on and on and on with these players. Nick Collison's another guy. So it will be interesting to see how Iowa State plays moving forward. Can they compete for a Big 12 title? That's probably a little lofty. But, man, what a job TJ Otzelberger has already done, and he deserves a ton of credit. Brandon Hickson, Utah allowed stuff to get into his head. This Iowa team isn't near as soft as when Utah was there. Yeah, I don't know. That's a very that term's soft. I hear people use that term a lot, and that's such a word. It can be defined in so many different ways. Are we talking about physical strength and physicality? Are we talking about a mental edge, emotional edge? I will say this, Brandon, and I think I know what you mean by that. This is a much more athletic team than that team was in 15-16, although that's one of my favorite teams. I wish that team had done more in the tournament, but I really liked Adam Woodbury. I really liked Jared Utoff. I really liked Anthony Clemens, Mike Gasell, those guys. That was a really good team. And again, the defense was actually a lot better. I think the defense was underappreciated because of the fact that we hadn't seen defensive performances like we've seen these last couple of seasons from France squads. So that was just an underappreciated team. But I do think Iowa has more physicality. We'll see if Josh Ogundele plays any tonight. That's a guy that, 3-4 years ago, Iowa, we would have loved to have had a big body like that. And now we've got him and we're not using him because I don't think he's in shape yet. Again, he's played well when he's been in there, but it's sort of an interesting storyline because he is a guy that he's the type of guy that Michigan State, as far as a physical specimen, I think of the next kid from Ohio or from Michigan State or the big. It seems like Ohio State always has a big kid. They've got a big kid in the middle this year. So you hope that a guy like Ogundele can get some time. But again, Iowa State's not real big, so I wouldn't be surprised if Iowa goes small ball throughout. Thank you for calling from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Who's on the line?
Aaron in Des Moines.
Aaron, how are you tonight?
I'm doing good.
Good.
I just want to make a point that Iowa might be in trouble next year when AJ Green transfers to Iowa State.
Are you hearing rumblings of that, or are you just speculating?
Well, yeah, rumblings. It's all throughout I sat next to Kyle Green at a UNI game 2 days ago.
Is that his dad?
AJ's not very happy with how UNI is playing this year, and I mean the kid has all the talent in the world, and he's probably transferring to Iowa State in the summer.
Okay, so my question is, how many years of eligibility does AJ have left?
2. He's a junior. I mean, this year doesn't count because of the COVID year.
So he's a junior. He's a junior now.
He had a medical last year, so he's using the COVID year this year.
Okay, so you're saying he's a junior now, and then he'll have 2 years after this?
Yes.
Wow. Okay. Well, he's been on. He was on some draft boards before he got hurt. So, are we assuming then that TJ has formed a good relationship with him, and that he wouldn't?
His dad's the associate coach of Iowa State.
So my question is then, with that connection, would that overrule his prospects at going to play in the G League or play at the next level? Because again, he was on draft boards a year ago.
He'll still play in the NBA if he goes to Iowa State.
You might be right. I will say this: Iowa State could use a point guard like AJ Green. I mean, Iowa could use a point guard. I think anybody could use it. I think he was one of the more underrated, and he came in. There were obviously you think of the DJ Carton kid from Bettendorf that ended up going to Ohio State and then Marquette, and of course Xavier's recruitment. I think AJ Green was just largely overlooked by a lot of teams. I think Iowa would love to have him.
Oh, he had offers from everybody. He just chose to stay home at UNI to play for his dad.
Yeah, but I think my understanding of the recruitment, at least from Iowa, is I don't think Iowa was really recruiting him hard towards the end. I could be wrong on that. That's just what I've heard. And maybe that's because they knew he was going to UNI the whole time. You could be right on that.
That's the reason. I mean, he had offers from Arizona, Minnesota, all them guys. So I just want to reach out and say that. I just really wanted to just stir the pot a little bit. Have a good day, guys.
Sure. Appreciate it. There's no reason to apologize. It's, this is it's an interesting storyline because as our caller pointed out, the connections now to the Iowa State coaching staff, and I totally forgotten that Otzelberger brought him in, and so yeah, if Iowa State's able to grab a kid like AJ Green, you become, because right now, I mean, again, you look at their roster, and I'll pull up Iowa State's roster just so we have it here. You got Isaiah Brockington, of course. You got Caleb Grill, the kid from UNLV. Trey Jackson's a junior point guard. Of course, Condit at 6'9". They've got the Kunk kid who's playing really well, the Slovenian athlete, and then Tyrese Hunter. I'll be honest, I haven't watched Iowa State enough to really know if they really run a true point guard, because you look at their roster and they don't really have it. I should have asked the caller. I'm assuming he's an Iowa State fan. But as far as a true point guard who's bringing the ball up the court, I don't know that they have that unless you're running Isaiah. I know Isaiah Brockington has the ball in his hands a lot. And I think he's the best player on that team. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I'll be intrigued by that. And of course, Iowa goes pretty small, at least initially out of the gates, with Joe Toussaint at the 1. So yeah, a guy like AJ Green, if they could figure out a way to get him to come over and give Iowa State a year or two, even if it's just a year, if he comes over for a year and then decides to go pro, that would be huge for Iowa State, and would give them an opportunity to compete. I mean, they're already competing, but certainly an opportunity potentially to compete for a title. Now, Isaiah Brockington, I know he's a senior, but does he have an extra year of eligibility? I believe he does, but I could be wrong, because he redshirted in 18. So my understanding is that he would have another year if he wants one. He played in 17-18, played in 19-20, played last year. So he would have another year if he wants one. So you get him back. And again, Caleb Grill's going to be back. Jackson will be back. Condit, again, another example of a kid who could come back. He has that extra year of eligibility as well. So he could come back for another year if Iowa State. Again, I don't know what Iowa State's recruiting class looks like next year. Kunk, again, another kid that they brought in this year from Washington State, but he's from Slovenia originally. And he could come back for another year. So all these kids could come back. It's going to be interesting to see how these different schools, we said the same thing about football, but how do these different schools handle the free COVID year? Houston Kelly says Cyclone fans are delusional sometimes with the coach is doing well. He absolutely is. And yeah, AJ Green was the MVC player of the year. And you remember it, even if you're an Iowa fan, he was on draft boards. AJ Green was getting looks from NBA teams, and then of course he went down with the injury, and of course that's going to derail your stock. But again, I'm not going to debate with the caller because I don't know if there is substance to believe that he is somehow going to transfer to UNI. He mentioned Kyle Green, who came over from UNI, so you have that connection there. And again, being able to play at the Big 12 level, you'd have to think that he's. But honestly, I'll be completely honest. I had totally forgotten that Kyle Green was hired by TJ when he was on that when he was hired at Iowa State. So that could happen. Wouldn't be shocked. Jermaine Jackson. Don't forget about Marcus Page. Yeah, another kid that Iowa was in on hard. I'm sure Iowa State. I don't remember his recruitment. I mean, I remember his recruitment. I'm sure Iowa State was in on him as well. But he had a terrific career at UNC. So, yeah, that'd be great. Brandon, I'm hoping for some development at the 5. If we cannot develop, they're going to be a short season. They're playing small ball well, Brandon. And remember, the Big Ten is, you've got some teams with a tremendous size. You think of a team like Illinois with Kofi Coburn. You think of Purdue with Zach Edey, Trevion Williams. They've got some size, but the Big Ten's not huge. It's not as big as it was a couple years ago. I mean, Luka Garza, of course, is gone. The kid from Minnesota is gone. I can't think of his name at the moment. Northwestern's got a true big. Michigan State, they're not. Again, they don't have a guy like Nix this year. But it would be nice to get some development out of Josh. I mean, Josh needs to get some run. He took last year to redshirt. I feel sorry for him because he couldn't get over here due to COVID restrictions from the UK. Finally gets over here, he gets sick. That puts him back. He's overweight. He loses a bunch of weight. Then he gets sick just a couple of weeks ago. He's trying to get into the flow of things, but I don't think Fran's gonna play Josh every night. And I'm not saying that he should. I think Iowa's best lineup is when you can play, Keegan, Patrick, Chris all together. And you're not going to play Keegan, Patrick, Chris with Josh. That's just not going to happen. I have a hard time envisioning that happening, I should say. Because again, you're going to want to have Tony or Jordan and a point guard on the floor as well. Yeah, we'll see where the development goes. Riley Mulvey's another young kid they got in the roster, but he's a year removed from high school. He should have been in high school this year. Of course, he reclassified. I don't see him getting much consequential playing time as the season goes on either. Thank you for calling from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Who's on the line?
Great, Lee.
Who is this? I'm sorry, you cut out.
Oh, it's Lee. Can you hear me?
Hey, Lee, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Couple of things. Why were the Hawkeyes wearing the black road uniforms the other night against Illinois? Did you hear any story on that?
That's a good question. I didn't even notice that, caller. Against Illinois, they were?
Yeah. Both teams had road uniforms. Iowa was in black and Illinois was in orange. That was very strange to me.
That's schools have become a lot more liberal as it relates to respecting the traditions of home and away uniforms. I have noticed that, but I don't know. I you know what? I really didn't even notice it. This is the first time I've thought about it. Yeah.
It just jumped at me when the game started, and then I just kind of ignored it the rest of the way, because usually they've either gone the traditional white, or sometimes they go with that yellow or gold, whatever you want to call it.
I can tell you why, Lee. It was a blackout game, so the fans were all wearing black, so they must have wanted to wear black. That was
gotcha.
What it was.
That would make sense. So back to the Purdue game, I really was impressed. I mean, being down 19, and if you'd have told me going into that game, we're not going to have Keegan Murray and Bohannon's going to score, what was it, less than 5 points, I'd have said we'd be lucky to stay within 30. And I was just really amazed at these younger guys. Perkins, one of the guys you were talking about earlier, he's just really playing very well.
Yeah, like I said earlier, I don't remember a time where I was actually not upset about starting 0-2. I think part of it is when you don't have expectations going into the year. And I still think, I don't care if Illinois is ranked right now. Rankings mean nothing at this point. They've dealt with injuries. They've dealt with a lot of attrition. The fact of the matter is Purdue and Illinois are two of the best teams in the Big Ten. And I think those two teams match up with Iowa very well because they have big men that can take advantage of Iowa, because Iowa doesn't have a Garza or a Nunji or an Ogundele who's ready. I don't think you're going to get that type of a mismatch against most Big Ten teams. You watch Indiana, Trace Jackson Davis is their big man, and he's 6'8", 6'9". You watch, Minnesota doesn't have the type of big man that we're accustomed to. Penn State. I mean, you can go down the line. I think Iowa is going to be able to use its athleticism, its speed, and be able to at least make up for the lack of big man in this league. And typically the Big Ten's very strong at the 5. And it is in parts. Michigan's got Hunter Dickinson. He's going to cause Iowa problems. But I do think Iowa can get through the Big Ten season. And once you get to the NCAA tournament season, the big man becomes a little bit less important, it seems like. We always hear guard play is more important in the NCAA tournament, and I think other conferences are more small ball oriented than the Big Ten conferences. So Iowa is built. I'm not saying they're going to do it, but Iowa is built this year to be able to make a run in a tournament-style event. That's my opinion, at least.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, look at Oregon. With their athletes, they just ran past us in that NCAA game. And last year we were built to wait for Luka to come down the floor and get the ball inside to him so much. And obviously, if we're not hitting threes, we're in trouble, especially last season. I think this team has got guys that can take it on the dribble, can drive to the basket a little bit better.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And I've made that comment about Iowa's team last year, just in comparison, even like the early going games this year. I know we're talking about Alabama State and Western Michigan, but I made the observation that if you just watch how Iowa plays, even last year in those games where Iowa completely overmatched their opponent, the offense still ran through Luka every single possession. And it was almost frustrating. I remember thinking, this is almost, I don't know, it made me a little unsettled, even though Iowa was incredibly talented from outside last year. This year, there's so much more flexibility in the offense. And you saw, like you mentioned, the Purdue game, Keegan goes down, and this team, I fully expected them to get blown out by 20-30 with Keegan.
Oh, yeah.
And they found a way to get it close without him. So, there's no reason to be down on this team right now.
No, I totally agree. I like Ogundele. He's impressed me. Rebraca, he's a little rough right now. I mean, he's had some moments, but
he's playing up
the big guys.
He's having to face up against 7'1" Kofi Coburn. I mean, he's just it's too bad. It's because he's not a natural 5, and that's why the one criticism I would have of Fran is if Ogundele was ready to play against Illinois, and of course he came in late, he should have been in there earlier. That's just he just should have been in there earlier because we were getting destroyed in that second half in the paint. And Iowa tried to go zone and it wasn't working. And they tried to go man and it's not working. So had they went to Josh earlier, maybe he could have stifled Coburn enough to where Iowa could have made a comeback. I mean, they did anyways, but maybe completed it.
Yeah. And like you, I'm very surprised we're favored by 5 points going over to Ames tonight. And I'm amazed the Cyclones have gotten it turned around this quick. The new coach they've got obviously took advantage of the transfer portal and getting some talent in there. I feel like we're a little bit more veteran, although I don't know, maybe not. I mean, and you hit the nail on the head with Jordan Bohannon. He needs to come out and shoot the three. And if he's not hitting, then he needs to be on the bench.
Agreed. I'm so tired of this narrative of, well, again, and I've heard it from multiple people, including people in the media. Well, you're not going to sit, Fran's not going to sit Jordan down. He didn't come back for a 6th year to be sitting on the bench for, 25 minutes. If he's not shooting threes, if he's not making threes, what is he contributing? I really want to know. I'm not trying to diss him, but what is Jordan contributing if he's not shooting threes?
Well, and you hit it again, that he does not defend really well. I mean, he's a defensive liability at times.
And I think he tries. I mean, I really think his effort level has gone up, but he's just disadvantaged. And let's be honest, Tony Perkins has some of those attributes that Jordan just doesn't have. The length, he's got a great wingspan for a kid his size. He's fast, he's athletic, and he definitely has a determination to defend.
Yes, totally agree. Well, I'll get off the line, Corey. I appreciate all that you do, and let's look forward to that bowl game for the Hawkeye football team. Hey, one thing on football, I'll throw this out real quick. Sure. I was going to ask you and Don to comment on this at one time. Several years ago, I met Kirk at an iClub function in Ottumwa, and I said at the time, shouldn't they just count the games in the division toward the division title instead of counting all the games? Because look at Nebraska this year. They played all the heavyweights of the East. Iowa did not play any of those. And wouldn't it make more sense that just your division games count toward the title in the East and the West? Just kind of throw that out there, and they mentioned that to Don sometime.
That's a good point. I haven't really, I guess, played with that idea before, but I will bring that up to Don. I think the one problem with that is you're just eliminating a third of your sample size doing that. So now you're having to you're going to run into, in my opinion, you're probably going to run into more ties, right? Because you're going to have less games to let the division race play out. But you're right. It's frustrating when the divisions are uneven. Although this year for Iowa, it helped us.
Oh, definitely. I mean, we let's face it. If we played Ohio State, Michigan State, along with Penn State, we probably aren't sitting there with just 2 losses.
Right. You're right.
So
yeah, no, that's a good question. I'll bring that up to Don.
All right. Hey, take care, Corey. And I'll be listening.
All right. Appreciate the call this evening, and absolutely go Hawks. And it's a good conversation to have, especially with Iowa next year and the schedule that Iowa has. It's going to be ridiculous. They're going to have a hard time winning games. And it's just a factor. Unless this offense does something different, I'm going to be harping on that all off season. Iowa's offense is going to have to make a change in order to succeed next year. Our line is open. 515-635-1601. If you want to call in, you're welcome to call in about football. But, of course, we're talking Iowa State. And if you haven't already done so, please subscribe. Okay, you see it on the screen. Please subscribe. Help us get to 1,000 subscribers. We're a ways away. So if you've already subscribed and you're wanting to know how else you can help us, share our show out on social media. There is a link below to donate to our show. I would appreciate that, but I would also appreciate a share on social media. It helps us to grow. So thank you in advance for that. And again, our line is open, 515-635-1601. If you're going to be at the game, let us know. I'm anxious to see how many Iowa fans are going to be there. Justin asks, did you guys pick up the Xavier kid? What Xavier kid? Oh, maybe Xavier Wampa? Yeah, Iowa picked him up. What a day it was yesterday. You could argue, Justin, I don't think Justin, judging from Justin's picture, I think Justin's commented before, I believe he's a Michigan fan. I could be wrong on this, Justin, so forgive me if I'm wrong. But Michigan gets these kind of kids all the time. Iowa, this is one of the biggest days in Iowa football history as far as recruiting. Yesterday was. So, yeah, they were able to nab Xavier Wampa. And now you start wondering, can he get the ball rolling even more so on a guy like Jaden Proctor from Southeast Polk, a guy like Kyler Casper from the Phoenix area. And boy, these three classes. Remember, 21 was a top 25 class for Iowa. We forget that. 2021 was an excellent class for the Hawkeyes. If they can get 22 to be, 22 looks a lot better now with Wampa's name in there. If they can figure out a way to get Proctor in 23, and I believe Casper is 23, boy, that class is going to be stacked as well. And you're looking at a period of time now where you're going to have a lot of talent on both sides of the ball. I've talked about Jazian Patterson. I think he's one of the more underrated skill position players Iowa has gotten in recent memory. Caleb Johnson, the kid from Ohio. I don't know as much about Caleb, but he was upgraded to a 4-star status. They get a 4-star quarterback in Carson May. So lots of things to be excited about right now. And boy, Xavier's, it's just huge. It's just huge. I know Rick Brown, former Des Moines Register writer Rick Brown, wrote a story today about just Xavier and how big it is for the state of Iowa. Of course, he compared it to Iowa losing out on Rafe LaFrentz in basketball recruiting years ago. And, it's apples to oranges. I get that. But Rick is a terrific writer, and he made an excellent point that it just does so much to the narrative around the school and just the feeling around the program. And there's no question Xavier is going to be recruiting. He's going to be recruiting Jaden. He's going to be recruiting Casper. Caleb Johnson, I saw a tweet from our friend Tom Kakert. I believe it was this morning that Caleb will be on campus here, I believe, this coming weekend, and there will be a plethora of other recruits from this coming class as well as the classes to follow. And all of those guys will be recruited hard, by Caleb Johnson. And when Xavier's there, he'll be doing the same thing. Just great to see. It's just great to see a kid like Xavier. Not only, he's a 5-star kid, but for him to stay in the state, for him to be an Iowa kid and for Iowa to be able to keep him here. That's what's so impressive about this. Iowa's had its share of talented defensive backs, but to be able to get a kid from in-state who's this highly regarded, there's just no question. It's just massive. Okay, Houston Kelly, AJ Green isn't going anywhere. I think we covered that. But he is terrific, and UNI's not had the start they would have liked. They've lost a few non-conference games that I would have expected them to win. Charles, more concerned if they have a true big. Iowa's loving small ball this year, and I think Iowa fans are loving watching it. Again, nothing against Luka Garza. I consider Luka quite possibly the best player to ever play at Iowa, but what they're doing right now with a totally different style lineup, I think, is impressive. Jermaine Jackson, I think Robbins is the guy you're thinking of for Minnesota. It's actually not Robbins. I was thinking of the other kid. What was his name? Oturu, Daniel Oturu. Why couldn't I think of that? But you're right. Liam Robbins is another kid, another big kid that's no longer here, and I think he's down at Vanderbilt. I have no idea how he's doing, by the way. I know Iowa was trying to get him to come here this past offseason. Imagine if Liam Robbins had come here. I know we don't want to talk about that. I saw Charles didn't like the idea of having a true big, but if Liam Robbins was here right now, to have that as a weapon, along with what you have, I'd say the same thing about Jack Nunge. Jack Nunge's playing good ball for Xavier right now, and if they were able to get one of those two guys here this year, have a big that you can at least rely on for minutes, whether it just be 15 to 20, maybe 25 minutes a game, that'd put Iowa in a different tier. They're already exceeding expectations, but that would be interesting. Spaghetti Factory, I put 400 on the ISU money line tonight using some of my winnings I got from Mark on college football this year. Okay. So you're obviously listening to Mark's advice, and I will say this: I would never bet on sports, but Mark is a genius as far as picking college football games. I wish I could do that as well as he does. Just the fact that I have a pick'em segment, and I'll just admit this. Maybe they can do the research they want to, but my money line picks and my game by game picks, I'm excellent at picking games straight up, and most people can pick games straight up pretty well. But in comparison, I think with other media members, and I don't consider myself a media member, but of course I was on the media list for Mark Rogers and picking games. I did pretty well straight up in comparison with others, but I got smoked as far as the Vegas lines. So, I'm not the guy to listen to. Absolutely, Spaghetti Factory. Mark Rogers is the guy. Charles, small ball wins the tourney. wins in the tourney. It seems to happen. I will say this: Wisconsin, kind of an exception with Frank Kaminsky, of course, going to the Final Four and competing for a national title. They were able to do it kind of the old style way. And Wisconsin typically does have a pretty good big, although now they're playing less through the big man. They don't have Reavers. They don't have, I guess, Micah Potter's there, but he's not really a true big. They don't have a Nigel Hayes, who was a little undersized but played like a big. So you're right. Small ball is the way things are done now, and especially you get away from the Big Ten. Look at Iowa State. They're kind of the epitome of what college basketball is now. A lot of transfers, not many big men. And if you have a big man, they're typically guys who can stretch the floor. And you could argue Iowa has a couple bigs. I mean, Chris and Keegan Murray aren't necessarily bigs, but like Philip Rebracha, you hope he can, once we go up against competition where he's not having to guard Kofi Coburn and Zach Edey, I think we'll see more of an offensive threat from a guy like Philip Rebracha, but he's just expending so much energy on the defensive end. I think it's difficult. Give us a call. We're on here for a few more minutes. 515-635-1601. If you want to talk about football, we can talk football. If you want to talk about basketball, we can do that as well. And of course, tip-off tonight is at 8:00 p.m. Central Time. We will be there live at Hilton, and then we'll be on after. As soon as we get back home, we'll be on with Coach Gary Close, breaking down the game, taking your calls and comments, hopefully talking about a big Cy-Hawk victory. If Iowa loses this game, it's not the end of the world. You hate to lose rivalry games, but I've never been less nervous. I mean, I don't remember the last time I was this relaxed going into a Cy-Hawk game. Usually I'm really nervous because you hate to lose this game, but this is a good Iowa State team. I don't care if Vegas favors Iowa. I don't expect Iowa to win tonight. I'm hopeful that they will. I'd probably favor ISU a little bit, but again, Vegas knows more than I do. But it's not the end of the road for Iowa if you lose this game. You hate to lose 3 straight going into your finals and your break, but these are 3 good teams that Iowa has on its schedule here. Brian, I feel that Ogundele is playing better than Rebracha. If they're going to play small ball, I feel like just use both Murray's and Patrick only. Rebracha seems like a liability. Let's remember, Brian, and I understand what you're looking at. Again, looking at these last 2 games especially, but Rebracha played really well against Virginia. Go back and watch that tape. Philip was competing hard. And again, when he's not giving up 4 or 5 inches, I think he can be effective on both ends. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Ogundele has played well, but the thing is, the difference is Rebracha's out there playing 20, 25 minutes in a game, and Ogundele is playing 5 to 10. I don't know how many minutes he had against Illinois. It might have been less than 10. I know he had like 16 against Purdue. But Ogundele is not able to play much more than that. So, of course, he's going to be able to play better and bang harder when he's not playing the minutes that Philip Rebracha is playing. So I wouldn't give up on Philip yet, Brian. You hope that Ogundele can get some spot minutes, but Ogundele is also going to struggle against teams like Iowa State, I believe, because he is going to be pulled out against big men that can shoot. And I don't know that you want Josh Ogundele guarding the perimeter. He's a guy you want guarding Kofi Coburn, but I don't know that you want him guarding, Kunk, the kid for Iowa State tonight, the transfer from Washington State, for example. Justin, I went back, watched that 2017 Iowa game against Ohio State. What happened to Iowa from then to now? To what they are now, they were monsters. And Justin, they weren't monsters, and they had an excellent game plan. Came out of nowhere. Ohio State, I don't think, got up for that game. But Justin, go watch what happened the week after that. The week after the Iowa-Ohio State game in 2017, Iowa gets their butts beat in by Wisconsin. They scored 14 points, all of which were defensive points. I'm not trying to rain on any Iowa fans' parades, but the offense wasn't that much better in 17. It had its moments in 17. The Iowa State game here in Ames was a terrific performance from the young offense. It was a better offense, but as we saw against Wisconsin, it was still a Kirk Ferentz, Brian Ferentz offense. So, but you're right. They certainly had a better performance that one week. And again, against Iowa State and a couple other performances. They didn't play badly on offense, but there were some down moments as well. Brandon, J-Bo wouldn't get the pressure if he was coming off the bench. Yeah. But is he willing to come off the bench? It shouldn't matter, right? Fran should start whoever's deserving. But certainly I don't think J-Bo probably wants to come off the bench. I don't think anybody wants to come off the bench. It'd be great if he was to step back and say, hey, I'm willing to do whatever it takes. And I'm sure I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt of that, but he is a human. And I wouldn't be surprised to see him start the entire season, whether he's struggling or not. I hope that if this trend continues, that Franz is willing to insert Tony. But again, whoever plays more minutes, I think is more important. There are downsides of starting a guy if you're going to play your bench guy more minutes. But Tony may not be as effective starting as he is coming off the bench. We just don't know that dynamic yet. We haven't really seen. I don't think we've ever seen Tony start even some games where they were thin last year. I don't believe he's ever started a game. I could be wrong on that, but that would be a wait and see type of deal. Houston, no matter what, if you're East or West, it's all the Big Ten. And I understand what the caller was saying there. I'm not saying I necessarily disagree, but there is a flaw in the argument. There's a flaw, I guess, in both arguments, especially when you look at strength of schedule. Brandon Perkins seems like everyone is chasing him. Don't you want the other team on their heels? J-Bo gives leadership to the bench as well. I don't know what you mean by chasing him. I mean, they're chasing J-Bo, trying to drive him off the 3-point line as well. But you're right, J-Bo. I think J-Bo, the positive that J-Bo can bring tonight is, and throughout the rest of the season, even when he's not making threes, if he's not going to be able to steadily make 2 or 3 threes at least a game, he's got to be a leader in the huddle. He's got to be a leader in the locker room. That's what he's got to bring, because Connor McCaffrey's that. If Jordan could be that as well, that could be a huge asset to this team. I'm sure it already is. I'll give him that nod. Justin, you are a Michigan fan. That's okay, and appreciate the kindness here. Houston Kelly, did you watch the girls' game? That was an instant classic last night. I did. I was on. We were live for just breaking down the Xavier Wampa decision, but we were live for a while after that. Or excuse me, we were watching the game live after that. I am just sending out a tweet here, so forgive me for a second. Again, if you haven't already done so, please subscribe. Please share our show out on social media. Tell others about us. Help us to grow. Help us to get to 1,000 subscribers. Okay. And yeah, it was disappointing. Great. I think that Iowa State team is really good. It seems like Ashley Jones has been here forever. She's a really good player. Of course, it would have been nice if Iowa State could have gotten her, but I know there's other circumstances as to why they didn't. But it would have been nice. Certainly, she's turned into a star for Iowa State. Imagine her and Caitlin Clark together. But that'll never happen. Circle her. J-Bo needs a big game tonight to silence the Cyclone fans on Twitter, but I'll take a win regardless. Are the Cyclone fans on Twitter relentless? Are they? Because all I hear on Twitter are well, I'm not even going to say who they are. The other fans that have been relentless over the past few days. I've been pleasantly surprised. I haven't really heard much from any Iowa State fans. Maybe I'm not friends with the right people. Maybe I'm not following the right Twitter accounts. But I guess if they're relentless and they're insufferable, then by all means, let's get a win tonight. Let's get a win either way. Spaghetti Factory, I can't pick against a competitive ISU team in Hilton. I understand. Iowa's had a hard time there, but they did win there 2 years ago. So not to say they can't do it. And of course, Connor and Jordan and Joe Toussaint, all those guys were a part of that team. So there's no reason to think they can't get it done, but you're right. This is a better Iowa State team. Charles Pinster, just to have a big to insert when needed, not so much in your starting lineup. Again, man, Liam Robbins or Jack Nungy. If one of those guys was here, you'd have to think this team would be, they may be undefeated right now. I mean, that's just all speculation. But again, assuming you had a guy who could match up one-on-one against Trevion Williams, against Kofi Coburn, those games could have been totally different endings. All right. Last call. Anybody that wants to give us a call before we wind this show down, our number 515-635-1601. We're talking Iowa State and Iowa tonight. We're also talking Iowa football. And of course, after the game, we will be right here from the Hawkeye of the Storm here on YouTube for Iowa postgame with Coach Gary Close. So we'll be on for Iowa postgame. So subscribe from the Hawkeye of the Storm right here, what you're listening to right here, this channel on YouTube. Also follow us Twitter or Facebook or both. And then on the bottom line, I'm going to switch this for a second. Follow our podcast through Spotify, Apple, Anchor, Google. And if there's a platform we're not on yet, let us know. We'll get it added to that platform. But we're basically on every platform right now. You can listen to all of our post-game shows, as well as Our weekly podcast, Brad has branded thoughts. My weekly podcast this week we'll have Coach Tom Kakert of Rivals and HawkeyeReport.com. He'll be on the show, and next week we'll interview Iowa 4-star recruit and commit Aaron Graves. So a lot of great content on the way. So if you haven't already subscribed here on YouTube, do so, and be sure to check out on our podcast through various platforms. All right, so we will be here after the game. I'm going to pop up a banner here for everybody. I'll throw the number back up while we're waiting. Let me get to the right banner here so that everybody's clear on when we're going to be live. Assuming that I can get out of traffic in time. And the traffic at Hilton isn't as bad as Carver, so I'm hopeful that I can do that. We will be live, Iowa basketball postgame with Coach Gary Close tonight, 10:30 p.m. So give us a call, tune in, turn on notifications. And again, if we're a little late, you know why, trying to get home from the game. But Iowa State tonight at 8 p.m. And, of course, the game will be televised on ESPN2 for anybody that's not able to make it out there to Hilton. An opportunity for Iowa to get what I would consider at this point a somewhat marquee win, and it should be rocking inside Hilton. Appreciate the time, everybody. Thanks for hopping on with us for a little bit this evening, and we will talk to you soon. We'll talk to you after the game for Iowa postgame with Coach Gary Close. Go Hawks.